Hey folks, welcome to Adobe Premiere Pro. To get started, you need to click on New Project here, and the New Project window pops up. I'm going to call the project Project 1, and I'm going to go to Browse to select a location to save the project. In this case, I'm going to go to Movies, and I'm going to save it in my Movies folder. I'm then going to go to Choose. So Project 1, Browse, choose a location, and then select Choose. When you're happy with the location, click on OK, and Premiere has booted up and is ready to go. The first thing you're probably going to want to do is to get some video clips into the software to have a look at. You can do that by going to File and Import. Search for the folder where you left your footage. I've got some footage here. I'm going to select one clip, 2 clips, 3 clips, that'll do. When you've selected a number of clips, you then click on Import. The clips then pop up in this window here. You can view them as icons, like so, or you can click on List View to see them as a list. It's all down to your own personal preference. To view a clip, double click on it here, and it loads the clip up in this source monitor. This is not a place really for editing. The source monitor up on the top left is a place really just for looking at and reviewing your clips. If you want to look at a clip or play it, you've got this thing here called the time marker, and you can use that to scrub up and down the clip, or if you wish, you can press play and then stop, or you've also got the spacebar. So you hit the spacebar once, that starts the clip playing, press spacebar again, that stops the clip. If you're feeling more adventurous, on the keyboard you've got the J, K and L buttons. If you press L, the clip plays forward. Press K and it stops. Press J and the clip goes backwards. If you press J a number of times, it goes back very quickly. And the same with L. If you keep tapping L, it goes forward very quickly indeed. So you can scrub up and down using the time marker, press play and stop here, spacebar, or J, K and L. The next thing you probably want to do is to set yourself a timeline or a sequence where you can start editing. And you do that by going to File, New, Sequence. And there's a range of sequence settings that you can play with. You'll choose your sequence setting depending on what camera you've used, the resolution and the frame rate you set on that camera. So as an example, many of you probably would have been using a digital SLR, probably shooting at 1080p on either 24, 25 or 30 frames. I'm going to click on 1080p 25 frames. This means that I've got a frame size of 1920 by 1080 and a frame rate that I've been shooting at 25 frames a second. I'm going to name the sequence down here, Edit 1. And then click on OK. We've now got a timeline, and in this timeline is where we're going to do our editing. It has a time marker and a play and stop button just like before, and also you can use the spacebar and the J, K, L keys on it once you've put some clips in there. Now if we look down, I'm just going to raise this up a little bit. If we look down in the project bin, we've got our clips, as we can see here, but we've got a new icon here. This icon represents this sequence over here. Now if I click on it like so, we can see that the sequence settings are 1920 by 1080 with a frame rate of 25 frames a second. If I grab this clip and put it into the timeline, I'm going to put it right at the start there. it sits comfortably on the timeline. Now the reason it sits comfortably in there is that the video clip, let's just check one more time, was 1920 by 1080 at 25 frames a second. And the sequence, if I just click on it one more time here, was also 1920 by 1080 at 25 frames a second. However, if you've got a piece of footage like I've got here that was shot at, let me just see if I can load it up, here we go, double click on it. If I've got a piece of footage here, this was shot at 1920 by 1080 at 50 frames a second. If I drag that into the timeline, it's going to ask me if I want to change the sequence settings. The sequence settings were set for 1920 by 1080 at 25 frames a second, whereas this clip, as you can see here, is 50 frames a second. So I need to go to change sequence settings, and it will then match my video footage. So the thing I quite like about Premiere is it's quite intuitive. It will set the timeline or the sequence depending on whatever your camera settings were when you shot something. So this piece of footage is 1920 by 1080. If I drag it into the timeline, it's going to say, whoops, let's just grab that back. So if I drag that into the timeline, it's going to ask me to change the sequence settings to match it. And I'm going to say yes. So just keep an eye out, folks. When you drag something into the timeline, if it asks you to change the settings, it's probably a good idea to do so that it sets the timeline up to match your video footage. Okay, thanks for listening. See you in the next tutorial.